This video is sponsored by The History of Spriting, a special video where me and some old friends of mine talk about our days of spriting before we moved on to reviewing. So if you're interested, please click on the link on the description box. The Jak and Daxter franchise, a series that is popular amongst many PlayStation gamers, mainly because it was made by the same developers who made the old Crash Bandicoot games for the PS1, Naughty Dog, and it was a platformer series like no other at its time, except for maybe Ratchet and Clank, that is. And this year is the franchise's 10th year anniversary, so I decided to take a look back at all of the Jak and Daxter games that were released, not counting PlayStation Move Heroes. So sit back, relax, and watch me pay tribute to this superb series and how it became popular to begin with. First beginning with Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy. A few months back I did a review on this game because it became a huge part of my gaming years, but there is a lot more backstory to this game that even many Jak fans don't know of. The development of Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy began in January 1999. However, only 3 members of Naughty Dog were working on the game, while the rest of the company were busy working on the last Crash game made by Naughty Dog, Crash Team Racing. Then when the PlayStation 2 hit the market, everybody in Naughty Dog started to work on the game. The idea for Jak and Daxter was when Sony Computer Entertainment showed Naughty Dog a character called Boxman and its animation engine. Development for Jak and Daxter took 3 years in production due to the features of time changing, smooth textures and no loading times whatsoever. Originally, there was supposed to be a third main character joining Jak and Daxter, and it was supposed to be based on the digital handheld Tamagotchi, but for an unknown reason Naughty Dog rejected the idea and just kept it as 2 main characters. And that's pretty much how Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy was made. When the game was released, it was really successful. It got overwhelming positive reviews from critics, and it sold over 1 million copies at its time. And as of now, the game has sold over 2 million copies domestically, and heck, it even got an 8th place on IGN's top 25 greatest PS2 games of all time. And if you've seen my review on this game, you should know that it's my favourite game of the series, because it's such a simple yet beautifully made 3D platformer that isn't around much as it used to be. Everything from its addicting gameplay, outstanding level design and atmospheric music makes it a clear reason to own a PlayStation 2. For more information, check out my review on this game. Now let's move on to the second game of the series, simply called Jak 2, or Jak 2 Renegade if you live in Europe like I do. The story takes place right after the events of the first game, where Jak and Daxter had uncovered a device found at the end of the first game. However, a dark creature emerges from the portal, which then Jak accidentally hits the switch of the device and sends Jak, Daxter, Kira and Samos far in the future. As they arrive in a post-apocalyptic city known as Haven City, Jak is captured by the Crimson Guards and Daxter manages to escape. The story is then later explained in the spin-off Daxter, but we'll get to that later. 2 years later, Jak is experimented on by the Crimson Guards using Dark Eco, but Daxter comes in the nick of time to free him. After getting the ability to speak and escaping the prison, Jak vows revenge on Praxis for infecting him with Dark Eco. Now every Jak fan should know that this game is a big dramatic change for the series. They first went with colourful, cuddly and friendly environments to dark, energetic and very mature settings. The new addition they added to the series are guns, which I think was added to rival Insomniac's Ratchet and Clank. Even though not all of the weapons are great, they still add to the dark and edgy atmosphere to the game, which is what it was rooting for. Plus they add more memorable characters to the series than before, like Torn, Ashlyn, Praxis, Crew and the ever so epic Core. Other than the weapons, new additions to the series are jacking vehicles a la Grand Theft Auto, hoverboarding like a skateboard, and with enough Dark Eco, have the ability to transform into Dark Jak. However, with all these new additions, there is one fatal flaw that every Jak fan has never forgotten, and I know people have expected me to mention this. This is also the first time Daxter becomes a playable character, whose gameplay only involves in a few minigames. However, with all these new additions, there is one fatal flaw that every Jak fan has never forgotten, and I know people have expected me to mention this. The game's difficulty is overwhelmingly high. Nearly all of the missions in this game require quick reactions, strong strategy and expert gaming skills in order to complete, but you will screw up no matter how hard you try. Heck, 2 people I know of made a top 10 list of the hardest missions in Jak 2. And who could forget that get the piece at the water slums level? I'm pretty sure that any Jak fan who had to play through this has been scarred by the horrific memories of being tortured by this hellish nightmare. Trust me, when you least expect this mission, when you play through this game, it will come and haunt you. But anyway, when the game was released, it was even more critically acclaimed than the first one, earning 2 awards at IGN and GameSpot, but only sold 400,000 copies, which was considered a disappointment. But despite that, I have to say this is definitely one of the best sequels you could find to a 3D platformer. That is, if you're strong enough to ignore the difficulty from hell. If I had to give the game a score, it would have to be an average bag of chili Doritos. Just an average one. 1 year later, the third installment, Jak 3 was released. The story is Jak and Daxter and Pecker are banished to the wastelands due to being accused of suspected crimes in Haven City. As they begin to suffocate in the heat of the desert, they are recovered by a group of wastelanders. They are then taken to a lost forgotten kingdom known as Spargus, where the King Damus demands Jak to serve him after he saved his life. From that point on, Jak and Daxter must get back to Haven City and finish the war before it's too late. The gameplay for Jak 3 is just like Jak 2, but still adds a lot of improvements. First improvement is that turning into Dark Jak in this game is a lot more easier to control. The hub worlds, mainly the desert, are twice as big, and the difficulty is finally at a right balance. New features have also been added, like new types of vehicles, and each and one of them are very fun to use, and the addition of Light Jak. With Light Jak you can regain health, slow down time, and grow wings to fly across landscapes. They also made just a little bit more improvements to Daxter's gameplay, but still, playing as Daxter can be mediocre at times and not as fun. The weapon selections have also made an improvement. There are more useful and more powerful weapons this time. If you're a huge fan of sandbox games, then there's no doubt that Jak 3 is your favourite game in the series. The deserts are so huge that you might easily get lost. If I had any complaints on the game myself though, it would be that some of the missions felt unnecessary and just felt like a waste of effort. But still, the difficulty in Jak 3 is much more smoother than before, so I can't be too critical on it. When the game was released, even though it got less than its predecessor, it still got critical acclaim from critics, and the sales were much better this time. And what do I think of the game? Well, it's a tie between whether I think this is better than Jak 2 or not, because Jak 2 had an exciting story to it, and Jak 3's missions were less frustrating. But nonetheless, I also give Jak 3 an average bag of chili Doritos. The following year, Naughty Dog released the racing spin-off, Jak Combat Racing. It's about Jak, Daxter and the gang being invited to listen to Crew's last will by his daughter Rain. Crew in the recording then reveals the toast they were drinking is poisoned and that the only way to get the antidote is to win the Kraz City Championship. However, as they progress through the races, they find out that another criminal syndicate led by the mysterious Mizo is also trying to win the championship, which then leads to more problems later on in the story. The game basically takes the driving missions from Jak 3 and puts it into one whole game and made it even better. Kinda similar to what Insomniac did with Ratchet Deadlocked, which was released in the same year. Jak is the only playable character in story mode, but other characters can be unlocked and playable in arcade mode. Jak can also take part in a variety of missions to obtain medal points and advance through the ranks. Because this game is so hardcore, you can blow your enemies up by using yellow and red eco power-ups. Yellow eco can be used to destroy the other racers, and the red eco can be used to protect yourself from other racers. You can also customize your vehicle at any time, providing you win some vehicle parts from races. This is also the first Jak and Daxter game to have both offline and online multiplayer, which was sadly short-lived. The game also has other game modes like Time Trial and Twisted Metal style game modes. When the game was released, it wasn't as critically acclaimed as the last 3 games, but it still got pretty good reviews. But some fans of the series were skeptical of the game due to it bringing back driving missions from Jak 3, which were largely criticised in Jak 3. However, the biggest criticism with the game was the autosave memory card controversy. This is something that occurred to many people who bought the game at the time, where it can glitch up the game and corrupt the save file. Sometimes it can even stop the game from playing and needs the PS2 to reset. But regardless, this is a really unique racing game in my opinion, and it is really underrated compared to the likes of Mario Kart. I give this game a bag of tangy cheese Doritos. So after the release of Jak X, Naughty Dog moved on from the Jak and Daxter series to start Uncharted on the PlayStation 3, so they decided to leave Jak and Daxter in the hands of Ready at Dawn and High Impact Games, which then led to the PSP spin-off Daxter. This was the first Jak and Daxter game not to have Jak as the main character, and gives Daxter his fair share of the spotlight. It finally reveals what happens between the events of Jak and Daxter and Jak 2, where Daxter is now on a mission to rescue Jak from the Crimson Guards, with the help of new characters introduced throughout the story. If you've seen my video game battle on this game and Secret Agent Clank, you should know that I think that this is definitely a well-made game for a spin-off title. Sure, it doesn't have that epic feel from the first 3 games, but it did show off more of Haven City, and other things that we didn't notice in the second and third game. Daxter's gameplay has been fully upgraded by giving him an electric swatter and an extermination tank. He can use various power-ups from his tank like the flamethrower modification and the ultrasonic attachment. Daxter can also use new moves like crawling underneath small spaces and other new moves he can obtain after completing a dream sequence minigame. You can still collect stuff like precursor orbs and golden bug items. Daxter can also ride vehicles just like Jak in several portions of the game. I have to say, with all these new features for Daxter, it beats the living hell out of his previous gameplays. When the game was released, it was a successful no problem. A lot of critics really loved the game, and it sold 2.3 million copies worldwide. I still haven't given a score for this game yet. I give it a score of a high bag of tangy cheese Doritos. And now for the final game, Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier. This is also another game that I discussed about in one of my video game battles. The plot is where Eco is draining from all the world, and Jak, Daxter and Kira have to find a solution and restore the Eco to its rightful place. However, things start to get worse when they encounter Captain Phoenix and his army of pirates. The game still keeps the formula from the second and third game, but adds new features like new eco powers, which you can obtain from various eco idols throughout the levels. Most of the game is now just aerial combat and getting from location to location in the plane. You can also customize your plane just like in Jak X, and upgrade your plane's weapons and health. Plus, you can also upgrade your eco powers from Kira, providing you have the Dark Eco to trade in for Kira. If you've seen my video game battle on this, then you should know that I have a lot of problems with this game. Most notable being the combat in this game can be frustrating, and it just isn't as smooth as before, and the dogs fights feel like a chore. But I have to say the worst part was playing as Jak Daxter. I mean, these levels are crammed, monotonous, and tedious as hell. Having Daxter turn into Dark Eco is a decent concept, but the execution, I'm afraid to say, it needed a lot of work. When the game was released, it didn't even come close to the critical acclaim of the first 3 games. There are a lot of good reviews than bad reviews, but the reviews were still mixed, with many fans considering it a disappointment. I would say, as a game on its own, it's decent enough, but for a Jak and Daxter game, there's a lot more that needed to be done. But I would give this game a bag of cool original Doritos. Overall, the Jak and Daxter series has come a long way to become one of Sony's popular franchises out there. It has received a lot of critical acclaim, sold very well, has gained a fan base, heck, it even got a lot of awards in the Guinness World Records book of 2008. However, the franchise has been left on hiatus for quite some time now, and a comeback is still needed for many fans like myself. I'm glad we still have Ratchet and Sly continuing on, but Jak is still missing from these 3, and let's be honest, PlayStation Move really didn't even cut it. I strongly recommend to those who haven't played the Jak and Daxter games yet, and hopefully with more fans asking for a 4th game, the more chances that it can be released. So that was my perspectives on the Jak and Daxter franchise, and if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll see you all in the next video.